There's an interesting phenomenon happening on Twitter right now. As if by magic, the same string of words, a vaguely legal-sounding paragraph, keep cropping up on some familiar right-wing Twitter profiles. Now, here's an example from GB News' Bev Turner. None of the information posted or repeated on this account is known by its author to be false, nor intended to stir racial or any hatred of, nor cause psychological or physical harm to any person or group of people, howsoever identified. Very strange, technical, bizarre statement. And it's pretty obvious what's happening here is it's a journalist reassuring her readers that she doesn't repost information she knows is false. Now, I've only been a journalist for a few years, almost a decade, but that seems like a pretty low bar, right? I don't knowingly tell you false things. Don't necessarily believe it's true, but it's not definitely false. So don't trust anything I say or share. But, I'm still going to say and share it. In other words, I'm not a journalist, I'm an entertainer. And by the way, I suppose you also get here, if I so happen to stir racial hatred. That was an accident, sorry. Bev Turner is not alone. Other journalists who have published the same text include former GB News host Dan Wootton. You can see here, none of the information posted or repeated on this account is known by its author to be false, nor intended to stir racial or any hatred, nor cause psychological or physical harm to any person or group of people, howsoever identified. Now, if you ever feel yourself having to put out a disclaimer saying, what I'm saying, I'm not certain it's false, and also, by the way, if it stirs racial hatred, purely accidental, sorry, right? It's the exact same text, by the way, as Bev Turner, copied and pasted, presumably. So what might have prompted Dan Wootton to share such a disclaimer? Well, in the run-up to the riots, Dan posted this. Now, it's an image of 9-year-old Alice da Silva Aguiar, who died from her injuries after the Southport knife attack. Completely tragic. Wootton captions the image with, "Goodbye, little Alice. I'm sorry your country let you down." Now, his tweet got 1.2 million views. That was, of course, tweeted in a context where false rumours were circulating that the Southport killer was a Muslim and an illegal immigrant. And those false rumours were shared by Dan Wootton himself. So on the evening of those horrific murders, Wootton tweeted this. So it's in quote marks. "We're making the UK safe for our own children. You're about to see the roar of the British lion." Dan Wootton says, "Lawrence Fox reacts in fury to the news that 11 children have been stabbed and 2 killed in Southport today." Now, the video Wootton shares is from an interview that he conducted on his own platform, where Lawrence Fox says this.
"We're going to see what the mettle of the British people are, because if we are going to see the police chasing after those that try and expose this sort of appalling behaviour within the extremist elements of the Muslim community, and they're going to chase those people down to the point where they have to leave the country or they're arrested on terrorism charges. If we're going to see that, but we're not going to see a guy who has been on a terror watch list, who arrived undocumented a year ago on a boat in there, come in and have your free stuff, and he's gone and murdered a child. You're about to see the roar of the British lion. And I absolutely would support that.
I absolutely would support that. What exactly were you supporting there, Lawrence Fox? And I suppose the most important thing there, everything you said was completely untrue, right? The person who committed those heinous crimes was not an illegal immigrant. They were not on a terror watch list. They hadn't crossed the channel, right? So just complete nonsense. And sharing that kind of thing in that kind of moment could have serious legal ramifications. The woman thought to have originally shared a fake name as the Southport killer was arrested 11 days ago for publishing written material to stir up racial hatred, or I should say on suspicion of publishing written material to stir up racial hatred. Now, you might wonder, could these disclaimers be an attempt to avoid the same fate? Now, it certainly seems plausible that that's the motive. According, though, to legal experts, legally, such disclaimers will have little effect. The secret barrister shared Bev Turner's statement and said this: "For those asking, this is about as effective a legal strategy as a bank robber donning a T-shirt reading, 'I am not dishonestly appropriating property belonging to another with the intention of permanently depriving the other of it.'" Right? So just saying, I'm not doing a crime while doing a crime doesn't necessarily stand up in court as a defence. Not that Bev Turner has necessarily committed a crime. That's for someone else, of course, to decide, not myself. The secret barrister may be right about UK law. It's not, though, the first time right-wing commentators have made the defence that they were never in the business of sharing accurate or trustworthy information anyway. In 2020, former Fox News host Tucker Carlson was sued for defamation, but Carlson got the case dismissed by arguing that nobody in his audience really believes he's reporting facts anyway. The summing up from the judge is really quite phenomenal here. She was a Trump-appointed judge, we should say. So she said this: "The general tenor of the show should then inform a viewer that Carlson is not stating actual facts about the topics he discusses and is instead engaging in exaggeration and non-literal commentary. Fox persuasively argues that given Mr. Carlson's reputation, any reasonable viewer arrives with an appropriate amount of skepticism about the statement he makes." So the defense worked, right? So Fox News went to a judge and said, look, you might think he's defamed this person, but any reasonable person watching Fox News doesn't believe what we say anyway. So how could he possibly have defamed them? Because basically this is an entertainment show. It's not a news show. We don't deal in facts. Therefore, we can't possibly defame anyone. The Trump-appointed judge accepted it, which I suppose was financially helpful for Fox. What it says about their reputation is something quite different. I suppose let's focus on the Brits here for now. Bev Turner, Dan Wootton, and there are a few others sort of posting this identical disclaimer on their Twitter account saying, if we accidentally stirred racial hatred with false information, don't blame us, Gov.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I've always felt the best way to avoid stirring racial hatred is to not stir racial hatred. That's probably the best way, rather than releasing statements saying you're not going to stir racial hatred. Like, just don't do it, guys. It's not very difficult. So yeah, look, it's a really odd one, and I do think so many of these kind of right-wing commentators have a lot to answer for in terms of what happened with the riots, because it was crazy how quickly the lie caught on, or the kind of fake news caught on, that it was this kind of guy who'd crossed the boat, who'd come over and essentially killed these children, right? And it was so terrible that in the aftermath of such a tragic incident, these kind of right-wing nationalists, these kind of right-wing groups and commentators has made it all about their ideological agenda against kind of refugees and asylum seekers in Britain. And genuinely, I think what a lot of these people want is the ability to say anything they want about marginalized communities. It could be asylum seekers, it could be, Black and minority ethnic people more broadly. They want the ability to say these things with impunity, right? What we fail to realize is there are laws in place that mean they cannot say anything they want with impunity. If you are caught stirring up racial hatred, that is a hate crime, and you will be penalized for that. That's kind of how it works. So my advice to Dan Wootton and everyone else who's worried about being accused of stirring racial hatred, my advice to them would be to not use tragic incidents where children have been murdered to further and advance their kind of ideological and quite simply regressive positions on asylum seekers. Wait for the facts on a matter to kind of come to the surface, to be crystallized before you start pushing your kind of fake news. And just don't be idiots. Don't stir up racial hatred. Don't target marginalized groups. Now, again, what these groups want to do is they want the ability to say what they want. So I think a lot of these groups are saying, we're being cancelled, we're being censored, we'll fight back, we'll take on two-tier care and all of this stuff. But they're kind of arguing on the basis of really shaky facts and shaky foundations. And I think the problem they're going to face is, over time, the more they get found wanting when it comes to the facts, the more and the further their kind of intellectual position gets undermined. I think, let's be absolutely clear, I think intellectual position has already been quite severely undermined because they hold these kind of regressive positions that are based not even loosely on facts. But the more they get found wanting in these kind of big incidents, they're going to continue to look at idiots, right? And that's the big problem for them. So yeah, I just think my advice to them would just be stop being racist, and no one will call you racist. I think it's very simple. Maybe difficult for them, but I think most people in Britain have been able to manage that quite okay.
Maybe this is going to cause me problems in court one day, but I would say you probably should believe what you hear on this show. Now, when it's opinion, you can agree or you can disagree. We're generally quite clear when it's an opinion we're sharing off and we debate them. And it's up to you whether you're convinced. When we're giving you the information, obviously epistemologically, it's difficult to guarantee everything you say is 100% true. But I like to think that everything we say to you is not just not confirmed to be false, but we have very good reason to believe is true because there's a mountain of evidence that it is true. So that's the attitude I come to this show with. If you think that we are ever sharing falsehoods or something that we don't have good reason to believe is true, I would hope you would hold me to account for it. And I'm not going to say, I didn't. Why did you ever think I was saying anything true in the first place? That's not the attitude I bring here. But I'm not the same as Bev Turner and Dan Wooden.